February 2002. Almost 3 years have passed since the release of Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and the Star Wars expanded universe supporting the prequel trilogy is in full swing, let alone the post-Return of the Jedi story, which had continued chugging along since 1991. But amidst this incredibly frequent publishing, in the build-up to what was surely to be a monumental and universe-changing Episode 2, came something nobody expected. HoloNet News, the information source for the Republic. A fully in-universe online news publication, complete with articles, interviews, and even advertising. But what is the HoloNet? Similar to the internet, as you can probably assume based on its name, the HoloNet is an intangible network of communications that spanned across the galaxy in the Star Wars universe. And of course, it was all centered on holograms, the seemingly central way to display graphics and communications in the galaxy far, far away. The way the entire HoloNet works is very convoluted and full of Star Wars science, as the interconnected web of the HoloNet was maintained via hyperwave transceivers, relay stations either aboard starships or placed in hyperspace itself. Because remember, hyperspace is a separate dimension, it's not just traveling at the speed of light. These transceivers received and rebroadcasted transmissions to their destinations at light speed through the HoloNet. The earliest the HoloNet appears, timeline-wise, from what I could find, is all the way back in Tales of the Jedi, the Freedon Nad Uprising Issue 1, making it much less of a modern innovation when looking at it through the lens of our real-world internet. But considering that the HoloNet was first mentioned in our world in the 1989 Imperial Sourcebook, its development into looking just like the internet is more of something that came about in later years. In some depictions, it's a news broadcast, like in Star Wars Rebels, feeling like TV or maybe even radio, where the rebels see holographic broadcasts, or sometimes broadcasts on a screen, like in Old Joe's Pit Stop. In other depictions, it looks more like the internet and social media, especially in more modern depictions, like Galaxy of Creatures distributing newsletters on the HoloNet. But in 2002, the HoloNet entered a galaxy much, much closer for the first time. In an attempt to make the politically infused lead-up to Attack of the Clones feel more real, a website called HoloNet News was created to establish the idea of the Separatist crisis, the growing public opinion on the Jedi, the state of the galaxy, and more. The first issue was published on February 28, 2002, 3 months before Episode 2's release, and it was properly called issue number 45 of HoloNet News Volume 531 of the Cocoa Town edition, the neighborhood where Dex's Diner is located. This made it really feel like you weren't encountering something new, but something that is a mainstay publication in universe. But in our world, the various articles covering business, regions, the Jedi, sports, life, and news were written by the legendary Paul Enns and Pablo Hidalgo, with some really wonderful illustrations by Joe Caroni, known for his work on Star Wars Insider and Star Wars Gamer. While issue 45 started this off in February 2002, the final issue was released on May 16, 2002, the day that Attack of the Clones was officially released into theaters. This means that there were only 11 issues of HoloNet News, which doesn't seem like a lot, but in reality, these online publications are so dense that this is an incredible wealth of information. And that information contains countless references to the Star Wars expanded universe in some really unexpected and incredibly niche ways. In this video, out of appreciation for the work of Enns and Hidalgo, and love for the old and new expanded universes, I'm going to dive into all of the best details hidden in HoloNet News. HoloNet News is a massive collection of story beats communicated through the medium of news. As news, it's almost all about current events, and issue 45 begins in 23 BBY, right smack in the middle of the Separatist crisis. This is a movement that happens almost completely off-screen, save for the beginning of Attack of the Clones, although the foundation for it is planted in The Phantom Menace. Many planets are deeply dissatisfied with the rule of the Republic, and begin talks of secession, some planets eventually even seceding. The first issue of HNN has this front and center in the central news section, with a story on the planets Ando and Cymirth seceding from the Republic. Right away, we see that the Republic has begun to crumble. Rumblings about military creation and war are also present in many places, with a reference to a Stark veteran criticizing Senator Amidala on her referencing war as a product of cowardice. Of course, the reference to Stark is calling back to the Stark Hyperspace War, a major conflict that the Republic judicial forces and Jedi fought 12 years before the Phantom Menace, so 21 years before this issue. We later also see references to Corrida supporting the Military Creation Act, a planet with a renowned military academy as established in the Jedi Academy trilogy. In issue 46, there's another reference to the Military Creation Act, and the fact that it'll take place on the date 5/16, which as previously mentioned is the date of episode 2's release. This is a double reference with the beginning of the movie being Padme's arrival on Coruscant to vote for the Creation Act. In this piece, there are references to Garm Bel Iblis, a Zahn character who played a massive role in the post-Endor EU as a Corellian general and founder of the rebellion. In later issues, we see more references to Bel Iblis withdrawing Corellia from the Republic, according to legal specificity, tying into some core world building surrounding Corellia and its culture from the 90s EU. We can also find an offhand reference to Tanis Mothma, Mon Mothma's mother. Interestingly, though, the roots of the rebellion seem to be found in criticism of the Military Creation Act and within the Separatist crisis overall, as seen with Padme, Bel Iblis, and Mothma. We also see build-up to the Separatist crisis in the business section, with renowned Bactoid Armor Workshop coming into conflict with the Republic and shutting down factories due to battle droid regulations, a direct setup for the future novel The Cestus Deception, and the Banking Clan being developed as a predatory and powerful organization based on Munilinst. The House of Tag, a corporate family established in the 1977 comics, is also mentioned as being publicly loyalist, fitting their later Imperial alignments. We also see references to the Kamasi senator Ishrin Otine opposing military creation, making perfect sense with their established peaceful culture, opposing judicial Terranold Screed, an Imperial villain character from the Droids cartoon, revealing that yet another judicial became an Imperial later on. Issue 49 introduces us to the Loyalist Committee, established by Palpatine in order to confirm who was firmly dedicated to preserving the Republic during the crisis. Issue 50 establishes that Armand Isard, a familiar name to fans of the X-Wing series, is re-establishing Republic intelligence in light of the crisis. Isard was later the director of Imperial Intelligence, establishing continuity there as well. A bombing is revealed to have killed Grand Senator Ax Mo, explaining not only the different Grand Senator in episode 2, but also Bactoid parts being found in the bomb, highlighting Separatist suspicions and increasing tensions. Dug activists later flew their pod racers to interrupt Mo's funeral, brandishing banners protesting their subjugation. Palpatine's advisor, first mentioned in Vision of the Future, Kin Mendoriana, is also mentioned as defending the Loyalist Committee against criticism, continuing his role as established in Cloak of Deception, released not long before this. The planet Kabul is also brought up, where riots took place over food shortages. The Separatists then swooped in and delivered food to the planet, bolstering Dooku and the Separatists' image in the eyes of the public. Separatist public image also comes into the limelight, with Senator Anaconda Farr from Attack of the Clones having co-written a play that heavy-handedly represented the crisis, to mixed reviews in issue 52, with Rhodian penchants for drama originally coming from old RPG supplements. A speeder crash involving a senator from Tanjay 4 is also reported in issue 51, a plot point coming directly from the novel The Approaching Storm from January 2002. But beyond this, the Separatist crisis's effect on the entire galaxy is explored in really nuanced ways as well, with a piece of issue 52's business section dedicated to explaining that the leisure industry has been impacted by the crisis. Citizens of the galaxy have less money and more political concerns, and therefore aren't traveling as much to places like Hologram Fun World, a concept from the Jedi Prince books, and the beaches on Amphar from the Black Fleet crisis. This doesn't seem to be affecting the core as much though, leaning into the anti-core separatist tendencies prominent in this era. The Republic at this point had begun to shut down HoloNet services in the Sluis sector, as anti-Republic propaganda was being spread over it, leaning into the somewhat authoritarian tendencies that the Republic began to adopt at the end of its lifespan. Monument Plaza on Coruscant was shut down following a tip about a potential terrorist attack, as the Techno-Union begins to heighten its shipyard security with more battle droids, and Malastare begins replacing lower-class Dug workers with droids as well. Issue 52 also introduces Larice Katrunis, the Paloic beauty pageant winner of Miss Coruscant, who comments on the Separatist crisis with the fittingly pageant-like answer of, "I think separation is very, dramatic. When it happens to families, it's sad. But when it happens to an entire galaxy, which has millions of families, it's even sadder." The build-up to Episode 2 is also seen in a few other ways, with the border dispute on Ancion from the approaching storm and the movie
He's just returned from a border dispute on Ancion,
featured in issue 54, and with the unveiling of a new Jedi starfighter in issue 47. Similarly, issue 53 references Naboo's spice miners that Mace Windu suggests are the possible culprits of Padme's bombing.
Our intelligence points to disgruntled spice miners on the moons of Naboo.
There's even a nod to the legislative youth program that Padme was a part of and mentions in a deleted scene from the movie. Issue 49 even mentions the Death Stick crisis, fitting right into their first mention in Episode 2. Issue 54 gives us a lot of important information for the first time about Count Dooku and the history of the Separatists. And keep in mind, Count Dooku first appeared in Attack of the Clones. He wasn't really hinted at as much except in material like this. This was the first mention of the Raxus Address, Dooku's first major public appearance since leaving the Jedi Order, where he publicly renounced the Republic and started the Separatist movement in earnest. Anti-war protests continue into issue 55, with Senate guards being called in to deal with them, as pro-Separatist protests continue elsewhere, even resulting in the death of a Jedi on the planet Cadinth. The final issue, 56, actually takes place during the days of Attack of the Clones. It references not only the attempt on Padme's life, but the theft of one Senator Simon Greyshade's yellow XJ6 speeder, which is also seen in the film, taken by one Anakin Skywalker. 1 week after the release of Attack of the Clones, when the website would usually update to the next issue, a grim announcement was added to the webpage, stating that the HoloNet channel had now been reserved for military use during the onset of the Clone War. This was the end of an 11-week saga of non-conventional storytelling, abstract storytelling told through the medium of online news, all leading up to Episode 2's release. HoloNet news is so special. I wasn't paying attention to its release at all, given that I was a baby at the time, but it's one of the few examples Star Wars had of scheduled, in-universe, somewhat abstract storytelling, and for that, it deserves to be remembered. The website's purpose and plot was continued in Star Wars Insider in later years, now dubbed Republic HoloNet News during the war, bringing you the latest updates from the front lines. Even later, audio and video editions of HoloNet News were produced to align with the 3D animated Clone Wars and Rebels TV series. The Rebels edition of HoloNet News notably being an Imperial broadcast instead. But one of my favorite parts about HoloNet News is that, like all online publications, it has advertisers. Because apparently, like me, people in the Star Wars universe make money from advertisers on their content on the net. But these ads are not real. They're, like the rest of the site, in-universe advertising. And my gosh, these are some of the best and funniest pieces of in-universe world building that Star Wars has ever done. Let's take a look at every single one of these ads. We've got an ad for Athletic Gal Aquawear, a swimsuit brand, a hilarious play on words with "Life's a Bith without a job," a band member job listing, obviously referencing the modal nodes. Whatever this boutique ad is for, though likely a boutique. A pair of ads for Chrono, a news program that cleverly plays on Time magazine, with a similar design except using the Star Wars word for clock. A chrono. One of the covers they show has Palpatine on the front as well, meaning that maybe he was the chrono person of the year in the Star Wars galaxy. There's an ad for the one and only Dexter's Diner, calling it the best eats in the Cocoa Town streets, without a source on that. Coruscant's reminder to fly safely, building up to the wonderful Coruscant chase in Episode 2. An ad for Hangar 9, apparently some sort of no questions asked kind of hangar on Coruscant. An Industrial Automaton logo, one of two near monopolized droid manufacturers in the galaxy, creator of the R-Series droids, and more. What seems to be a movie ad for Easy Spacer, a play on Easy Rider starring Isranur Karasin and whatever Coda means. A fun ad for a club known as Christie's Club, with a goofy tagline reading, "Putting the dive in diversions," trademark, and if you need to ask directions, don't bother coming, over what I believe is Padme concept art. Another example of the Republic's subtly authoritarian nature with a PSA reading, "Lost? Tramper? Immigrant? Proceed to Eastport and declare all goods." There's a banner ad from Marin Data, a security company that also manufactured spy droids and was part of the Corporate Sector Alliance. In-universe clickbait, with an ad claiming that if you click a moving Nuna, you'd win a credit, though absolutely not giving me any credits despite how many times I clicked it. An advertisement for Episode 2's Outlander Club, with the tagline, "Are you game?" likely advertising gambling, as it's accompanied by the credits currency symbol. The Cocoa District's pet store, with an alarming name, Pets and Pieces, which advertises a whole bunch of EU and film creatures, including a dingo from At Star's End, and shockingly, Sarlacc spores. The tagline of, "If you can't find it in our store, then it may find you," is great too. There's an ad for the new M31 Airspeeder. Wake up and smell the repulsor lift. Seats 2, fire red only, all leading into episode 2's speeder sequence again. Sorasub, the iconic Celestin company, makes an appearance with an ad for the Spy Sprite mini holocam. The model present in the ad seems to be a colorful, mass-market version of the Senate holocam from all 3 prequels. A hilarious ad for Siramco's intimidating business tables, poking fun at the dramatic tables we see all across Star Wars. Some wires can sometimes appear being chewed on by a conduit worm in this Exterminator ad, marketing Toxicocyanaxis D587. And I don't blame you for clicking here, conduit worms have always freaked me out. A funny religious ad for the Church of Toydaria, claiming that not everything is black and white. An ad for a magician named the Fascinerus, Maliminus, Nefandus, Numemerus Adlerati, a sorcerer of Tund, a classic EU group from the Lando trilogy that you'll recognize if you watched my Force Religions video. A really funny teeth whitening ad parody for, quote, yellow tusks on Gamorreans. All they have to do is use Sparkling Tusk Blaster. And there are 3 more ads specific to the HoloNet news site itself, with a hilarious piece on the most popular baby names, listing Losibaru at number 1, a name that only appears in another HoloNet news article. Number 2 is Janara, the name of a system and planet from Adventure Journal. Barada at number 3, a reference to the day the Earth stood still, like Klaatu and Nikto. Number 4 is Gariel, Luke's love interest from the Truce at Bakura, and featuring in another article. And number 5 is a sharp keening at 85 cycles, followed by 5 atonal mandible clicks, clearly on the list because of the Killix or something. Then there's a funny little ad about HoloNet Kids, a child-friendly news source, something I wish we saw. And finally, a Scomplink ad, letting readers know that the publication is available to them on their pads, seemingly predicting mobile phones serving as news sources for the masses. I think that's all the ads, but I may have missed 1 or 2 hiding somewhere, because sadly the site is no longer available, and I was only able to explore it through Wikipedia resources, by the way, love you guys, and the Wayback Machine. But during the production of this video, the Wayback Machine actually went down, so that made this even harder. But nonetheless, I think I got them all. If you know anything about Pablo Hidalgo, you know that he is one of the most knowledgeable people in the world on the topic of obscure Star Wars lore. And through Entz and Hidalgo's writing, that is absolutely clear. Here are some of the deepest cuts found on HoloNet News, and the stories that they tie into. Issue 49 included a section on the Seepin Civil War in the Jedi Watch section, which describes Jedi sent to negotiate a peace treaty, including Boltar Swan and Empedigeos Brand. Boltar Swan is a background character from Attack of the Clones, and was featured pretty heavily in other Clone Wars era EU stories. But Brand, on the other hand, was a spherical floating steampunk Jedi first introduced as a survivor of the Purge in Dark Empire 2, before we knew pretty much anything about the Jedi of the Republic. And he was only spherical and floating because of damages from Darth Vader, so it would have been cool to see what he looked like before he was injured. In the same issue, Jedi Watch also references Jedi stopping a group known as the Iridium Pirates in the Vuchal system, who used power gems to power their weaponry. This is all taken straight out of an LA Times Syndicate comic strip from 1982, known as the Power Gem, which featured Han Solo meeting the very same Pirates of Iridium. Their ship design even matches from the original comics. Interestingly, a sports section is featured on every single edition of HoloNet News, despite the Star Wars universe never really focusing on sports, other than pod racing, and father racing if you count it. In these issues, Smashball is mentioned, first appearing in my beloved Children of the Jedi, Gravball from the Rogue Squadron comics, Lemmy from the Crystal Star, Green Putt from my beloved Planet of Twilight, probably being golf with a name like that, Blob Racing from Jedi Search, which I was happy to read, Nuna Ball, which showed up in the background of the Outlander Club, High-Low Ball from Darth Maul Shadowhunter, Swoop Racing from everything, and Terraskasi from the video game Masters of Terraskasi. And another sad yet funny point in the sports section is the establishment of the Rats Tyrell Foundation, a group named after the pod racer with a full family who died in the Phantom Menace. Founded by his son, the group was focused on getting pod racing banned galaxy-wide because of how dangerous it was. In issue 50's section on the application of hypermatter, there's a reference to the McGrody Institute, an organization focused on AI programming named after Nasdra McGrody, also first mentioned in my beloved Children of the Jedi. Issue 48 and 53's regional news contained bits about stone mites, which debuted in 1979's Star Wars No. 28, with the mites in HoloNet news destroying a statue of Palpatine and a government building on Tinna, Tinna being a planet from Han Solo's Revenge, and the home planet of Basil from The Acolyte. Issue 47 and 58 include bits of obscure setup for the 1993 West End game sourcebook Supernova, including the fact that a red giant in the Demophon system is going to go supernova, and a later business piece mentions the gas giant Tyed Cant from the same book. Zorba the Hutt from the iconically goofy Jedi Prince series is mentioned in issue 48 as being imprisoned. This makes perfect sense as his story in those books begins with his prison breakout. Issue 53's news section features a story about Mace Windu and Yoda stopping a potential murderer at the Yagdul ambassadorial landing platform. Kuran, the Jedi from the opening cutscene of Dark Forces 2, is said to be supervising the investigation into the would-be terrorists' activities. In an intentional parody of negative reviews of The Phantom Menace, Issue 48's Life section includes a piece about the Holo films released that year, one of which being Crimson Empire 3, a comic which had not been released yet as the third part of the Crimson Empire comics by Randy Stradley, Mike Richardson, and Paul Galassi. Issue 55 mentions the planet Eriadu's Minister of Security, Gideon Tarkin, the future Grand Moff Tarkin's younger brother, from the sourcebook Kraken's Rebel Operatives. Ladinair Torbin, a Grand Inquisitor dating to the West End Games era, is also mentioned as the Information Director of the Judicial Department. Halagad Ventor, a legendary EU character who deserves a video of his own, was the main villain in Domain of Evil, another West End Games supplement. He's mentioned as lost in the Virgilian Civil War in issue 45. The second Ewok film, Battle for Endor, features a character named Noah Brickalon, who crash-landed on the Forest Moon with his friend Salak Wheat. Issue 49's regional section features a piece describing the fact that Noah and Salak disappeared near the Monsua Nebula, and that the 4-year-long search for the two is ending due to Wheat's father running out of money to fund it, making this marooning even darker than it was before. Some other really wonderful parts of the site were the bumpers, with best-selling books featuring 2 about Dooku, a weather report generated by entering your zip code, sometimes with raining frogs, TV schedules, a Today in History section, top-selling song charts, with presumably a droid song at number 1, and an election special for number 56. But my absolute favorite detail hidden in HoloNet news has to be a single other headlines blurb at the bottom of issue 50. It reads, Senator Greb leaps to fund extragalactic survey. This is just incredible, because Greb leaps, as established in Cloak of Deception, is the name of the senator of E.T.'s species as seen in The Phantom Menace, and is Spielberg spelled backwards. But referencing an extragalactic survey makes this single line a loose canonization of the plot of E.T., recontextualizing the aliens landing on Earth in that film as part of Greb Leaps' survey. This type of attention to detail is what I love so much about HoloNet News. The coolest thing about this site is that it's just a culmination of everything that had happened up to that point, with references to nearly every big series or book that was published in the 90s, and tons of comics too, bringing it all together in subtle ways. But still, being a random, obscure website tied into the release of a movie, HoloNet News is not as known as it should be. But that's the case for a lot of Star Wars media. People see the movies, people watch the shows, they're big, but us as readers of books and comics and obscure RPG supplements, we see the side of Star Wars that not a lot of people do, and I think that's special, and HoloNet News was a huge celebration of that. Thank you all so much for joining me on this journey. I'd like to extend my sincerest thanks to Marv from the incredible Star Wars blog Numidian Prime, who created a compilation of all the essential parts of every issue of HoloNet News, which was an absolute necessity for my navigation of the site's vast wealth of info. Thanks, Marv. And for my reading recommendation, I have to simply recommend the HoloNet News website, and I'll have it linked down in the description, along with Marv's wonderful guide to HoloNet News. But also, you're going to want to make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on, because I'm not done with HoloNet News. And my next video is going to dive into quite possibly the most interesting story featured on the entire website, which I specifically left out of this video for a reason. Baby Ludi.